All right, this is Mr. Chelmecki. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to e-learning day 1. We are going to begin by some review of factoring quadratics and factoring cubics. So notice the first part you see on our screen. Take a look. We have, on the left side, we do. On the right side, you do. So we're going to stick with that left side, and the right side is going to be your homework. So if you'll notice on your notes packets and in your homework packet, these are the exact same pages. Alright, so I'm going to do the left, you can do the right. You can pause it, and you can do that right after I do that first one. Knock out both of these things in one step. Alright, so let's first again notice that we start with 4 terms. Alright, don't be intimidated by that cubic. Focus on the fact that there are 4 terms. We have a great strategy for this called factoring by grouping. And all we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, let's look at these first 2 terms. Let's group those together. Let's look at these second 2 terms, and let's group those together. Now, once I do this grouping, I'm looking for what is the common factor in each group. I see a 6. I see a 16. Those are both even, so let's take out a 2. I see an x cubed. I see an x squared. Let's take out an x squared. Okay, now what's left on the inside? 2 times 3 gets me back to that 6. X squared times x gets me back to that x cubed. Keep my minus. 2 times 8 gives me 16, and x squared times 8 would give me that x squared back. So there's my first group. Now keep that plus, that's very important, and look at our second group. We have 9x minus 24. 3 goes into both of those. We're going to factor out that 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. So we still have that x, notice, and 3 times 8 is 24. So now when we do this factoring by grouping, remember this is very important that we have the exact same thing on the inside of each of those groups. Because what we're basically saying is that 2x squared times this binomial, and then we also have 3 times the same binomial. So I can pull those out into one separate binomial times 3x minus 8. Think about doing this backwards now. If you were going to distribute 2x squared times 3x, that's right here, 2x squared times 3x. 2x squared times negative 8, there's your 2x squared times negative 8. 3 times 3x, there's our 3 times 3x. And 3 times negative 8, there's our 3 times negative 8. And that's factoring by grouping. Alright? So if you want to pause this, you can do your homework portion now on the you do side, and you'll see this is going to be very similar to what we just did. Alright, let's do a few more together. So I'm going to keep rolling here. And remember, you can always pause and rewind, so if you need more time with that, please do that. Now you'll notice, again, we have 4 terms, we have a cubic. One thing I want you guys to notice, specifically as I group these, group those first 2, but now see this minus sign with that 4x, that minus right there. That's got to stay with that 4x. So as you group these, you can do 2 things. You can do a plus negative, or make sure you get that minus inside that group. But you got to make sure, remember, that's a negative 4x there. Okay, because now as I pull out my common factors, I can see these both have a 3, and I can take an x squared. Okay, and then in my next group, or what's left here, we're going to have just an x, because we took out that 3, we took out x squared, and we need this 1 here to hold our place, because otherwise we wouldn't have anything to multiply to get back to that 3x squared. Now, see, that plus is going to come down here and be a plus right here, but now I have a negative 4 and a negative 4, and that's why it's important you keep that negative. So that negative 4 comes out. Now watch what happens when I pull out a negative 4. It now changes this to a positive x, and it changes this one to a positive 1. And that's what I need, because these have to be the same. If you get it to a point where they're different because of a sign, that's because you forgot about the negative or you didn't pull out a negative. Okay, so now we see on the outside we have 3x squared minus 4, and on the inside we have x plus 1. Okay, there we go. Alright, and again, take some time. Why don't you pause it and go ahead, do number 4 there. You have that in your notes packet from class on Friday. Alright, now we have trinomials, simple trinomials. Alright, what makes these simple? That's what I'm wondering. Alright, if you said that they all have an a value of 1, you are correct. That makes them simple. We don't have to worry about grouping. We can simply just say what multiplies to our constant and what adds up to our coefficient here. This is where I like to use that big X to organize my thoughts. And remember, since that a term equals 1, I can go straight from my big X right to my factors. So I'm going to set this up. And again, this is just helping me organize my thoughts. If you don't need this, you don't need to write it. All right. So as we go, I'm going to get a little thinner pen here. All right. I need 2 factors that multiply to 56. If you're having trouble remembering these, go ahead and put things in your calculator. But here's a clue. They have to be 1 unit apart because this is negative and the difference is 1. So if that clue helps you, 7 times 8 gives us 56. Now one of these needs to be negative to give us the negative 56, and it's got to be the larger one to give us the negative 1 on the bottom. Okay, now again, this is simple because this coefficient is 1 right there, boom. And because that's 1, I know that my factors have to have an a times an a. That's what makes these simple. And whatever values we have here, those are going to go straight into our binomials, and boom, we are done. All right, if you want to pause it, go ahead. You can start with number 6. You can do all 3 of those. I'm just going to finish up these 2 and give you guys a little more practice, a little more observation here. So again, I'm going to put 14 on the top because I want 2 numbers that multiply to 14. I'm going to put 9 on the bottom because I want them to add up to 9, and I can see that pretty quickly. If you don't, just start writing them out. 1 times 14 is 14. 1 and 14 don't add up to 9. 2 times 7 is 14. 2 plus 7, boom, that gives us 9. So again, since this coefficient is a 1 in front of that k squared, we know that's got to be a k, and that's got to be a k. So I'm going to go k plus 2 and k plus 7, and boom, we're done again. Now, check this one out. You guys might be noticing that one looks a little different. Okay, that's called our difference of squares pattern. I'm hoping that you're recognizing that by now, because if you do, it makes our lives so easy, because all we need to remember is that when that middle term cancels out, we're going to have x times x is x squared. We know that. 3 times 3 is 9. But because we don't have a middle term, we're going to make one of these positive and one of these negative, and boom, we're done. If you forget this pattern, check this out. You need something to multiply to negative 9. We have no b terms, so that's going to be 0. So we need 2 things that multiply to negative 9 and add up to 0, and that's going to be positive 3 and negative 3. Alright, check out this next heading, GCF trinomials. Notice I have these organized so nicely for you guys. GCF stands for greatest common factor. This is always something we want to look for right away. So maybe we should have started with this, but since I have them organized very nicely, you guys can see now, GCF means look for a common factor before we do anything. So I'm looking at this, I see a 4, I see a 40. Okay, right away I'm saying, oh, boom, I can pull out a 4. I have a b squared, I have a b, and I can pull out a b. So now what's left? 4b times b gives me 4b squared. Keep that minus sign. 4 times 10 gives me that 40, and we pulled that b out. So that's it. That's why I like the GCF. Makes things easy for me. Check this one out. 4, 12, 112. Oh, that's yours. I'll let you think about that a little bit more, but I'll give you a hint. There's a GCF to pull out. All right, pause, work along, or continue with me, and let's do a couple more. All right, next, 4, 12, just so we don't forget. Remember, these are for me, these are for you. And that's your homework. So make sure you're keeping up with us and doing your homework as we go. All right, 4, 12, 280. 4, pull that out. So this doesn't have an n, so that's all we can take out. But again, that's going to make this easy because now we just have an n squared minus 3n. 4 times 12 is 3. Let's see. If we can do this with mental math, that's great. If not, pull out your calculators. 28 divided by 4 is 7. So 280 divided by 4 gives me 70. That's okay to use your calculator. Don't worry about it. That's what it's there for. All right, now we can go ahead and factor. I'm going to use that big X again to organize my thoughts. that 4 is just going to hang out. Don't let that bother you, but don't forget about it. So now I need factors of negative 70 that add up to negative 3. Again, use this clue. If this is negative, one's positive, one's negative, the difference between those is going to be 3. All right, so I can see this pretty quick. It ends with a 0, 7 and 10. Boom, multiply to 70. The difference of those is 3. And now I know that negative's got to go with the 10 to give us the sum of negative 3. All right, and just as we did before, we can go straight to our binomials now because we pulled that 4 out. So this is now a coefficient of 1. So this is going to be n plus 7. And then we're going to have times n minus 10. Boom. All right, let's do one more of these. And again, pause at any time. Try these out. These are yours. Don't forget. All right, pull out that 6. I'm left with n squared plus 7n. And again, if you don't see this, then check on your calculators. Say, does 6 go into 42? If it does, it makes our lives a lot easier. 6 goes into 18 3 times, so 6 goes into 180 30 times. Let's make that 3 look a little nicer. Come on, eraser. Alright, big X, multiply to negative 30, add up to 7. And again, this is negative. One's got to be positive, one's got to be negative, so I'm looking at the difference to be 7. So 10 and negative 3 are going to be my values there. I want to use this thin pen again. I don't like that thick one. Let's see if it switched up for me. Let's get our answer up here. N plus 10. Give me a nice plus there. Hold on a second, let me reset this. It's moving a little slow. Alright, we're back, and I think our pen's going to be working a little nicer now. 6. Don't forget about that. And then we have n plus 10 and n minus 3. And there we have it. Alright, we're getting close, guys. Next, notice these. We have guess and check. We have British method. Remember, I call that British method. Big X is how I start, and then we factor by grouping. So it's already what we've seen. And what's important to notice is that all of these are trinomials. All of them have a coefficient that is not 1. Alright, so when we set this thing up, we're going to start with this. I like my big X. Some of you guys do, some of you guys don't. Just helps me organize my thoughts. So I need factors that add up to... Sorry, let's fix this. We got to change that mindset. Here's what changes now when we have that coefficient. When we set up that big X, we need not just the negative 28 on the top, but 5 times negative 28. And on the bottom is going to be negative 13. Alright, grab your calculators, unless you want to just multiply those over on the side. And let's do 5 times negative 28, and we get negative 40. So here, this is really what I'm looking at for my big X. Negative 40, negative 140, excuse me. Negative 140 and negative 13. Now here's where you might have to do some work, and that's okay. Let's list some factor pairs that we know. Okay, so if we start with 140, if you just want to start listing what we know, you can do that. 1 and 140. The difference of those is 13. We're really far off. So again, maybe you don't want to start here. 2 and 70. Again, not very far. Let's see if 3 goes into 140. Just hit 140 divided by 3 on your calculator. See if it goes in. Doesn't work. Let's see if 140 goes in. Well, I got 4 goes in. 4 and 35. I'm getting closer. I need the difference to be negative 13. I think 5 is going to go in because it ends in a 0. So 140 and 5, and I get 5 and 28. Again, I'm getting closer. The difference of those is 23. I need 13. Let's see if 6 goes in. 140 divided by 6. Nope. Let's see if 7 goes in. 140 divided by 7 is 20. Maybe you guys saw that right away, and if you did, that's great. But if you don't, this is exactly what you want to do. Take that time, write out those factor pairs, 7 and 20, and now, since this is negative, I need my larger factor to be the negative one. Alright, so what we're doing now is just like what we started with, which was factoring by grouping. So remember, we need to take this and make it into 4 terms. The first term stays the same. But this middle term, this negative 13v, is going to split up into 2 terms, and that's what we're using these side values for. So we're going to split it up into plus 7v and minus 20v. And then our last term, that negative 28, stays the same. Okay, now we can go ahead and do this just like the first problems we did. We group the first 2, we group the second 2. Don't lose this minus sign. 5 and 7, no common factor, so all I can take is a v. So I still have 5v plus 7. And negative 20 and negative 28, I can take out negative 4. So remember, I want this to end up being the same thing over here. So negative 4 times positive 5v, negative 4 times positive 7 gives us negative 28. And now we can see again, this is what we need. Those need to be exactly the same. Then what we have on the outside, what we factored out, is our first binomial. And what we have on the inside is our second binomial. And there we have it. Alright, go ahead and try out number 18. I'm going to do 2 more for you guys. So if you want to keep watching, go ahead. If you want to pause and try out the next 2, go for it. Alright, this is a little smaller numbers, so this shouldn't be too bad for us, right? Let's go ahead, set up that big X. And since you guys got the hang of it now, remember it's 2 times negative 20 to go on the top here is negative 40. Negative 3 goes on the bottom. Again, with smaller numbers, we can probably think of it a little quicker. I need multiples of 40, add up to negative 3. So again, if you need to list them out, start with 1 and 40, 2 and 20. 3 doesn't go into 40, 4 and 10. Difference of 4 and 10 is 6. I'm getting close. 5 times 8, boom, there it is. Difference of 5 and 8 is 3. So if I go 5 and 8, and I know that the 8's got to be negative to give us this negative 3 here. Alright, so remember now we switch to make it 4 terms. 2k squared stays the same, but we're going to split that middle term, and that middle term is going to split to what we have here. So it's plus 5k minus 8k, and then minus 20. Okay, so that stays the same. This term splits into these 2. Okay, now let's go ahead and group. Once we get 4, once you guys get the hang, this is the easy part. Plus negative, don't lose that negative. 2 and 5 don't have any common factors, just take a k, and I get 2k plus 5. Second group, negative, negative, take out a negative 4, and I get 2k plus 5. And again, there we go, k minus 4, boom, first factor, and 2k plus 5 inside parentheses, same thing as our second factor. I'm hoping by now you guys are saying like, all right, I'm feeling so much better about this. I'm glad we did this review. I'm glad that I tuned in. This looks great. All right, let's do this last one now, and let's see where we go. All right, 6 times 20 goes on top. Negative 23 goes on bottom. All right, now my difference is negative 23. So these ones are a little further apart. I know it's not 1 and 120, so maybe we want to start with our list 2 and 60, 3 and 40, getting close, 4 and 30, and that's going to get us close. What about 5? 120 Again, if you need your calculators for this, just do 120 divided by 5 and see what we get. I got 24. Alright, 6. I want them to add up to negative 23. Let's see, 120 divided by 6 gives me 20. No, let's try 7, doesn't work. Let's try 8. 120 divided by 8 gives me 15. Oh, good, here. So remember, this is positive now on the top, so I want the sum of these to be equal to 23. So we got 8 and 15. That's what we want. Both of these are going to be negative now, because negative times negative gives me the positive, negative plus negative gives me the negative here. Alright, so that was different because we were doing one positive and one negative before, but now we have this product is positive. So we want the sum of those to be 23. Alright, now let's get our 4 terms and we'll split that middle term up. 6k squared stays the same. On the sides of our big X we have negative 8k. We have negative 15k. We have plus 20. Alright, now let's go ahead and group. And again, hoping that this is now the easy part once you guys have practiced this enough. So if you group it like that, remember there's got to be a plus in between there. Don't think that it's multiplication. Factor out our common terms. I can take a 2k out of this first group, and I'm left with 3k minus 4. 2k times negative 4 gives me negative 8. Alright, so I got a negative here, so I need that to be positive. 15 and 20, I can take a negative 5. That's going to give us a positive 3k, which is what I want. And that's going to make that a negative 4. And again, I need those to be the same. So by taking out that negative, it reverses those signs for me. So on the outside, our first factor is 2k minus 5. And on the inside, our second factor is 3k minus 4. Alright, that's it folks. We are done for the day. Work out the other side of this if you haven't been working out as you're going, and that is going to be your homework that you will turn in. Thank you very much.